Hello, thank you for downloading, listening to, and watching the Lean Into Art Cast, a show where a couple of visual storytellers get together and take on various topics that tend to bubble up when one takes on this endeavor of visual storytelling, communicating with images. We think hard about this stuff, so you will too. My name is Jerzy Drozd. I am a cartoonist and a teaching artist, and the other host is...
Hey, I'm Rob Stenzinger. I'm a user experience designer, kind of a generalist style UX designer. And then also I design and make games, video games.
True. I guess it does make sense to specify, right? Like when you say design and make games, you could be talking about Monopoly. You could be talking about
board games, card games. I mean, we're in the midst of a. I haven't looked at the market data, but I'm pretty sure it's a renaissance at least in the US related to like the physical games.
It does seem that way. Like Dungeons and Dragons is another one that I feel like has become very in vogue. A lot of people I know are, people like in my life, like Zach Giolongo, he's never stopped. But like, there's all these new people coming to it all of a sudden, and like different institutions around Ann Arbor are hosting D&D nights. So, yeah, gaming is cool, Rob. No more John Stossel stories about like how it's ruining children's lives to play games.
Why does that make you laugh? No. Gosh, we think news has become recently problematic, but I think poking at people's concern for the otherness, like what are those kids doing over there? I don't know, can't be any good. Thank you, John Stossel, for confirming my fears. Thank you, Geraldo Rivera, for confirming my fears on the classic show 2020. Is that still on anymore?
2020?
2020?
2020. Yeah, it's still on.
Oh, wow.
I don't think John Stossel has anything to do with it anymore. And I always pick on him because I remember he did a story on Marvel Comics back in the 80s. No, it wasn't Marvel Comics. I'm sorry. It was it was about 80s cartoons and how they're just commercials to sell toys. And I remember having this like visceral reaction to him going like, yeah, so what? They're cool shows. It doesn't matter. My parents aren't buying me the toys. So what difference does it make to you that I'm watching these cool shows?
It's
right?
None of your business, pal. That's fun.
We're almost in like extra lead territory here.
I know it's not well, maybe. Yeah, that's not a bad thing. A little bit of this is a window into the kind of things where we pull on a conversational thread and often can't help ourselves but make some new observations and exploration of it. And that's the extra lean style of Lean Into Art, which that's, if you're wondering what's this extra lean thing, that is the show that only our subscribing patrons at patreon.com/leanintoart have access to that. And it's it's a little special thing that we put out.
It's us working out in the mental dojo kind of idea.
Yeah.
Yes, this all began because I thought that I said the sentence, "Children's lives aren't being ruined by games," and that I thought that was a funny.
And that's the premise. There you go. You nailed the premise. Like someone's in the newsroom, the pitch, doing a pitch around the table. They're like, "What if games hurt the children?" Right? And everyone's like, "Ooh, tell me more."
Are you scared enough? Did you wake up today and you weren't quite scared enough? Anyway, I have
a vague sense of I'm not scared enough, but I don't know how to get there. Maybe John Stossel can help.
So in defense of Mr. Stossel, Troy Shadowing Tronics is in the chat. I swear to God, we're going to get to our topic today, but this is going to be a fun one anyway. He says, Stossel has his own weekly show on a different channel. He also did a story proving kids knew Power Rangers was just a show and that the violence wasn't real.
That's beautiful.
There we go.
Thank you, John Stossel.
Yeah, we mean it this time. All right. So, Rob, we do our best to show up every week with some kind of visual storytelling topic, and it just so happens that it's the end of the year, closing in on the end of 2018. I almost said 2016. Oof. Flashbacks to when we did our 2016 versus 2006 episode, which was a tough one. Remember that one?
Oh, it was a fun one. It was tough though.
It was a deep dive.
Oh yeah.
Which we'll have to link to in the show notes. But
yeah, interesting. I'm just saying.
Yeah, we reviewed like the last 10 years of our lives. So, but rather than do a year in review, what we thought we'd do is revisit this format that we call reading, watching, playing, where we look at some things that we are engaging with in a more relaxation style, playful style. So it actually relates to our little digression at the top. Stuff we're playing, stuff we're reading, stuff we're consuming for pleasure, relaxation, diversion, what have you. And we go into some reasons why. Could it turn into a lean into art holiday gift wish list episode? Who knows? Maybe, or maybe not. It's either way. It's gonna be two visual storytellers talking about the way that they engage with their entertainment in the lean into art way, where we look at why as well as what.
Can't help ourselves.
Yeah,
it's like little water cooler discussion with us. It kind of goes like, oh my god, like there's this thing on Netflix and it was so it got me really riled up, and then the other person in the conversation is waiting for the why, and if it's not there, then someone's forming a question to dig deeper, and because digging deeper somehow, I don't know, there's something there. I guess it's, okay, I'm gonna go there. Why? I just like the part of the why. We'll dig more into why later, but like it's the fuel, the things you're putting in. Like this is an interesting natural resource of experiences you can mine to write stories, and it's just having fun and taking a break from time to time, and it still is feeding and nourishing. Even the break in and of itself is worth it. Like, not to imply, oh, resting, that's for terrible people. Hi, I'm John Stossel. I wanted to tell you about the plague of sitting down. It's something. I don't know. That's all I got.
Will you survive? There was a comedian who did a piece on Dr. Katz. He was describing the news as always like, will you survive? Will your family survive? Our 9-part series, Surviving the Big One. I forget the comedian's name, but it was in a Dr. Katz episode. So I'm trying to do my due diligence in crediting the source. But anyway.
Right. And honestly, to credit my source, I'm not talking about 2018 John Stossel. I'm talking about 1980s John Stossel. So, Hi, I'm 1980s John Stossel. All right.
Okay.
That aside, the resting is important, obviously. Like, we're not here to endorse the, work till you drop, never have a rationalization for every darn thing. That's not there. Some things are just, I would propose that the things you do feed your creative process. You can't help it.
Yep.
But it doesn't have to feel like work.
And sometimes it's a slow burn. Like, I just went and saw the 1978 film Superman in the theater earlier this week. And there was not only like seeing on the big screen changes the way it feels, because I hadn't seen it on the big screen since I was 5, but I being that immersed in it again refreshed certain things about the story, where like scenes that I thought about it one way before, I completely changed my perspective on it. And like I was like, this scene now is very magical to me for these, and like the moment I had that reaction of like, oh, why am I feeling these feelings? Why am I suddenly feeling so warm and full of, like this big feelings? And I'm like, okay, well, what happened? What happened that made me, right? That's like my instant go-to is like, why did that do that to me? Anyway, curiosity, kind of an important thing. You want to hit the music?
Yeah, let's go there.
All right, here we go. We are transitioning over.
This is a problematic song, as much as I love it.
Well, we don't have to hear the whole thing. It's just to get us to transition.
Nice riff. Nice beginning riff. Getting a little hot here, though.
I want to do something off-brand. All right.
Whew. All right.
Don't want to play too much of it anyway, because I don't want YouTube to suddenly shut us down. So what are we reading, watching, and playing? So we'll start this section with the what, and then in the next section we'll maybe dig a little bit deeper onto it. So we'll start with you, Rob. What do you pick? One, R, W, or P?
I was how about reading?
Okay.
And all right, something that I've read recently, and audiobooks I consider reading. I know it's a conversation. It's sort of, this is content that was crafted to be the prose style of narrative, but then performed in by someone who is turns the words into audio. Often, I don't know of a better source than Audible, which we should totally do one of those affiliate things. Note to self. But yeah, so that's my common way of getting through long prose books is Audible, just because it works when I'm doing chores, commuting, what have you. And a book that I went through multiple times is Norse Gods by Neil Gaiman. And I was so torn to get, I was like, it had great ratings. I was curious about it. And I know it's and Neil Gaiman has a great voice, and it's read by him. That and I don't know what my hesitation was, but I waited for months and months to pick this one up.
Was it Norse mythology by Neil Gaiman? I'm trying to look it up while you talk about
it. Oops. Yeah, I think so. Norse mythology. Thank you. I think I conflated other Neil Gaiman book titles by writing it down incorrectly as Norse Gods. But yeah, Norse mythology, which has a bit of a tour of the Norse gods and key elements of the Norse mythology. And then just in a storytelling way, sharing like these little narrative snippets that are interesting stories in and of themselves, but then they do actually chain together for this overall, here's how stuff begins from the Norse mythology perspective. Here's some interesting adventures along the way, a couple key events, and then here's how things wrap up. And you get to explore the old Ragnarok, the end times.
Any particular story that jumps out at you that like really stands like front of memory? Like, oh, that was one.
Thor's hammer being stolen. Thor.
Oh, bye.
Thor. There was some giant was able to be sneaky and stole Mjolnir, and that the trouble that the gods go through to get it back. It's awesome. So you get to see it's so clearly I carry expectations they're kind of Marvel flavored, right? I have that Marvel interpretation of Thor, Loki, Odin, and Midgard,
Volstagg, Hogan the Grim,
right?
Yeah, I forget the name of the fellow with the sword at the doorway to the Bifrost.
Oh gosh, yeah, he can't help but see everything. Heimdall.
Heimdall, yeah.
And so it's many of these characters are present, and many of them have elements of what I had been exposed through the Marvel interpretation. But I was surprised to learn that originally, Loki was actually a sworn blood brother of Odin, not Thor's brother. And then there are just different dynamics and things like Hela or Hel, right? Is she's actually the daughter of Loki. And so Loki has like some really troublemaking, like a certain generation of kids of his is exceptionally antagonistic, and honestly, and how they end up antagonistic toward the gods. That's an interesting story. Like what's it? Fenris Wolf. Really, it's the gods and how they behave in some ways a lot like so the Norse gods have lots of character flaws, just like the Greek myths as well. But but different, and they are. You can find maybe some analogs and some interesting comparisons here and there, but like, it's a fascinating. Um, it's fascinating because of the differences in what I was exposed to already, but then, like in itself too, the exercise of creating this Neil Gaiman performed version of these tales, and how he is encouraging the sharing of myths and their retelling and reinterpretation as an interesting act in and of itself. That's a pretty fascinating premise to me, to say that, uh, like anyone's sitting around a campfire telling, maybe having heard or read this book, by Norse myths by Neil Gaiman, and then sharing your version of the stories, and maybe they get mixed up or mashed up, and how, like that human endeavor is, um, it has, I mean, well, for our own history and how we've shared knowledge and transmitted information and whatnot, that's a neat act in and of itself. But then just the practicing of the storytelling, and seeing what is important to you, and what you take away from it and what you share. So I like the sort of wrapping that and the context that this book is presented as well.
Plus, Neil Gaiman is a great reader of his own books.
He really is. Yeah.
So,
have you come across that one?
not that one. I mean, I have been listening to, actually, Anne's been listening to, and I've just been sort of like listening along with her, a series of essays that he did. So it's just like a collection of Neil Gaiman. It's like, it's a collection, I forget the name of the book, but it's like forewords and speeches and essays that he's written over the last X amount of years.
Oh.
And he just reads them aloud, and they're really great. So yeah, just look up any Neil Gaiman audiobook, and I think you can't go wrong. Troy, Shadowing Tronics, is in the chat saying that he's currently reading Tom Clancy's Op Center. It was something I bought when they still sold books at the store out of curiosity, but never got around to reading until recently. Well, they still have some bookstores, Troy. There's a lot of independent bookstores you can go to. Yeah, like the borders are long gone. But he says makes a chapter by chapter review, makes a hard chapter by chapter review because the chapters are so short. So we have Tom Clancy's Op Center. I'm all familiar with Tom Clancy's his brand of work, right? It's military stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I mean, it's like military and spy drama and political intrigue and action. It's yeah, I think it's been a long time. I think I've read a Tom Clancy book. But
so Troy was saying it was the grocery store at the time. Books at the okay. So
gotcha.
Back when you could get the books at the grocery store that he worked at the time. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, I suppose the books that I mean, those are typically a good deal too. When you get a book at the checkout.
Yeah. At some big box stores, you can still get, like at what's it called, Walmart. And as a matter of fact, I found out that Rockets is at some Targets, which is pretty exciting. So whenever I go to different Targets in different towns, I look and like, where is it? I want to see my book in this big box store. All right. So what am I reading? I just finished an audiobook myself, and it was another collection of essays by C.S. Lewis. And actually, it's a collection of sermons. So just to give you proper context, and it's so like they're like sort of interestingly constructed moral standpoints that he proposes. And one of them, the reason I picked up this one was because there was one called "Why I'm Not a Pacifist." And as somebody who is fascinated by the topic of pacifism and has is interested in exploring ideas about like what's the nature of force in his storytelling, I was like, well, this I got to hear. Why is C.S. Lewis not a pacifist? And he makes a pretty convincing argument as somebody who professes to be a Christian and love the sinner and hate the sin kind of things, but yet it's okay to kill sometimes. What? But I'm not saying I agree with the man. I'm just saying that it was interesting food for thought. And so, but
this might be a silly question. So why did C.S. Lewis write sermons?
well, he was a Christian apologist who taught, courses on literature, and then during World War II, he was asked to do these sermons at a what was it? Where was this? He
Sort of a
No, it doesn't say. It doesn't say where he delivered the sermons, but it was preaching to young men about to go into the service. So a lot of the lectures and sermons are about preparing for difficult times and how to mentally, morally, emotionally prepare yourselves for what you're about to go through. So yeah, it's just more of, I love the way Lewis, I think he's the master of the metaphor, and he finds ways to get at a abstract and complex idea through a series of different metaphors that are often very pithy, and very witty, and very relatable, and very catchy. They stick in your mind. So he helps kind of like unravel really complex and complicated thoughts that way. And he takes his time to get there too. That's another thing I really enjoy about his writing, is that like the way he uses language is very pleasant. It's like I don't know how to describe it. I don't want him to get to the point, if that makes any sense.
Wow.
Right.
So he must have that's wild. I'm really curious to, yeah, I remember as a kid reading The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, but not really going much further. And I remember liking it, and I know like that you're a big fan, and it makes me curious. Especially with that, because I don't know how you can not become, somehow off topic with that kind of, with what you just described.
Gosh, how do I get at what I love about his stuff so much? He takes his time to describe an idea from a variety of different sides and angles so that you come to the conclusion on your own, and he's not telling you what to think. I feel like he's gently, through language, guiding you to an idea. But he doesn't just deliver like a pat, simple sentence and says, well, that's just the way it is, that's all. He also is a man who asks why a lot. And so when he proposes some like Christian statement or ideal, he'll dig at it, and he'll give you like a lot of rationale and evidence to support why he agrees with this point of view. So, that's the caveat you always have to give with Lewis, is that as a Christian apologist, he's talking about Christianity a lot. But what I find especially compelling about it is his richness of language, and the way he thinks about ideas and moral quandaries and the human condition. That's much, much more interesting to me than the other stuff. So yeah, The Weight of Glory, another one that he did, and there's actually an audiobook you can get where it's the only known recording of him actually delivering the lectures, is called The Four Loves. And he takes the four Greek loves, what is it, Eros, Storge, Agape, and Philia, and examines like what is the nature of these four different kinds of love. So like Eros obviously is erotic love. Storge is familiarity, I believe, like the way you love like somebody who's just a part of your life for a long time. Philia is the love of friendship, and agape is like the highest love. It's like this like an illicit love. It's like just loving your neighbor as yourself kind of idea. And so that one is like super fascinating to listen to. Although I will say it's also dated, because he starts talking about Eros, and he's like, or he starts talking about Philia.
Was it
Philia,
emphatically gendered?
Yes, that's a great way of putting it. It's emphatically gendered, and he's very gentle about it. He's not condemning anybody, but it's like when I get to that part, I'm always like, oh, Lewis, yeah, I guess you were a man of your time.
Yeah.
Thank goodness we're in a better place now than we were then. But so anyway, okay, moving on.
Okay.
What else you got on your list?
A fun one that I haven't finished. I just a reading. So I may end up sharing this on a future reading, watching, playing. I don't know, another couple months or whatever when we come back to this topic. I'm having a lot of fun listening to How to Invent Everything by Ryan North. And it's like the premise of it is, so let's say you rented a time machine and went back in time to some point in the distant past, and it broke down. But you have this manual that has some key ingredients in how you could efficiently rebuild society. And it's a fun premise. It's in that kind of dry, jokey style that I like from Ryan North, and that's it. I'm not done with it, but it's been a fun ride so far. And it's interesting too. I guess I'm going to have to get a actual copy of that book because it was illustrated by Lucy Bellwood.
Oh, that's right.
And he's verbally describing the illustrations, but it makes me curious to see.
Oh, that's good. How to Invent Everything by Ryan North. And yes, friend of the show, Lucy Bellwood, did the illustrations of the physical book. We'll link to it in the show notes.
And I guess she kind of illustrated the audiobook too.
I guess so.
Yeah.
So I've got a watching, and I'm very grateful that nobody has come to me to ask how I feel about the new She-Ra show. Not because I don't like it or because I like it or because of any other reason. It's just that I didn't want to really talk about it too much yet because I'm enjoying it one episode a week. I'm trying to I'm really trying to I'm not trying to make any kind of strong stance against binge watching. I'm not going to tell anybody else how to live their lives.
I didn't expect to, but here we are.
Is
that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying you're all enjoying television wrong. No, actually what I'm saying is I only have so much bandwidth in my life for entertainment, and we'll talk about that in the second half of the show, I think, a little bit. But also, it's just that I noticed that I was missing the days when I had a week to think about what happened in last week's show and make some speculations about what's going to happen in the next week's show and so on. There was, in the 90s when Beast Wars was on the air, which was one of my favorite shows of all time, it's I was consumed with speculating on that show, and I missed that experience. So anyway, when I find a show that I'm very, very interested in, I purposefully limit myself to one a week. So Voltron Legendary Defender is another one that I just finished the seventh season, the latest season. Man, oh my gosh, what a finale. But and they continue to just tease me, we're gonna kill Shiro. I'm don't kill Shiro. We're gonna do it. Please don't do it. I'm gonna be really upset if you do it. It looks like we're gonna do it. They do that to me since season 2. They've been doing this to me. But I started watching She-Ra. I'm 3 episodes in, and I gotta say, I like a lot of what this show is doing. I really, really enjoy it. And I mean, the fact that you have a variety of people come in all shapes and sizes in this show, which is I get why they didn't in the old days because it was to sell a toy. This show doesn't have that restriction of trying to sell a toy, so they can be a little bit more imaginative with all the different body types. The representation is great. I love that Bo is this sweet, lovable guy who is the emotionally intelligent one, pitted between these 2 fierce women who are just at each other's throats in the first couple episodes. I love the designs in it. I really like what they did with Madame Raz. I liked her a lot, and I could go on and on about it, but I don't want to spoil it for people who haven't seen it yet. But again, I'm only 3 episodes in, but I'm loving everything that I've seen so far. Yeah, my only compunction about the show, I wasn't sitting there going, "Harumph, they're changing it." It's just that the thing that I was worried about is I hope they don't make it too violent. And they didn't. It's accessible to young kids, which I really like. That's the main thing. Is just please don't reinvent it for grown-ups. Make it for young people, and they did. So good on them.
Yeah, it looks really promising. I checked out one episode, and I'm trying to save it to watch it as a family. And that's always a thing too, is trying to align schedules. It's not easy. But it's kind of I'm like, this is definitely going to be a fun one for the whole family.
So, just quick warning, unlike shows like Steven Universe, which I feel like this is a spiritual successor to, or My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, one of the things that does stand out about the show, I was talking about this with Jesse recently, um, there's this like aspect of betrayal, like well, you saw in the first episode, there's like this deep betrayal felt by one character on the show. And I'm thinking about really young kids. I feel like this is, even though this is aimed at young kids, I feel like it's aimed at 9 to 12-year-olds. I don't feel like it is quite as, I would say your mileage may vary if you go younger than that, because you've got these contentious relationships. You got a lot of arguing going on too, which I find delightful. But again, I don't know if I would put it in front of like a 5-year-old. So,
no, that is interesting. One, and there can be that maybe it's not quite ready for the whole family. I think I would try it, honestly, with what I saw for the one episode. Complex emotions and all. And sometimes I think the complex emotions from you know, there are layers. There's like the visually obvious aspect in how emotions are being expressed, and then there's the actions the characters take, and then how do they act out with one another. And maybe there's layers that get lost in you know, depending on your age and whatnot. But I think some of that can connect and honestly create more sympathy for some characters who are willing to go there and have challenging negative emotions.
yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. So yes, knowing that Katra has a reason for acting the way she does, and she's not just the bad guy, right? So yeah, anything on your list that you're watching?
I did watch season 1 of My Hero Academia, and it's one of those. I mean, there's so much media that comes across my social feed. I engage with my social feed differently than I have in the past. It's not like my hangout, water cooler, informal chitty chatty thing, because that's not the temperature of the room right now. But still, there's a lot of interesting things that fly by, and I'm like, wow, that's I got to tune into this. I got to, and some of it I don't get to forever, but it's in, you know, I file it away, and eventually, and My Hero Academia was on my radar for a long time. I've watched the dub, in part because I don't know. Sometimes I want to draw while I'm watching something and what have you. I know there different interpretations happen. Things get translated and all that. But even with that, I think the team at Funimation does a really good job of translating stuff. I've watched hours and hours and hours of Dragon Ball Z and that kind of thing. So they're great. So I enjoy the dub of My Hero Academia season 1. And I don't know what to say as far as commenting on specifics, but I do feel they really play with your expectations as far as the fate of characters, and like stakes got raised faster than I expected, and interesting twists. It's well written, high action drama, epic hero, big power kind of show. And it's and you see characters who are at the level of well, in what's it like to have powers at the high school level, and then what's it like to be, well, the staff and the teachers and stuff teaching at that kind of place, and the sort of, well, different challenges that they face. And the overall premise is you have a young kid who really wants to have powers. He lives in a society that has a high percentage of people, like 80% of the people in their society have some kind of, they call it a quirk. And it's fun. well, I don't know, like it's not when it I don't what do you call this kind of story where it's sort of life is twisted a little bit. It's a familiar world and
Like magic realism?
magic realism. Okay.
Is that what they call it?
Okay, that rings a bell. Because I don't know if it's like magic realism with the desire to explore gotchas and surprises, kind of like a Twilight Zone interpretation, that kind of thing. So it's like, hey, it sounds great. It's so many people have powers. Characters like you, person like you, probably would have powers. 80% chance, right? What's that like? You know, it's mixed. So
right, yeah. Be careful what you wish for, kind of thing.
Yes, exactly. There's a little bit of that, and it's definitely it's not for a young audience.
Is it One Punch Man intense?
It's in the neighborhood. Yeah.
Okay.
It's somewhere. Yeah, it's in the neighborhood of that. It's kind of like
so there's some visuals that I might find a little bit intense.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's not gratuitous, I would say. But but it's tough because I know I don't have the best sense. I'm better than I was 10 years ago or so, as far as being tuned into, I don't know, being more sensitive to violence. I'm way more sensitive to violence than I was a number of years ago. So
I started watching One Punch Man, and I love the concept. I love the idea behind it, and I think it's a beautifully executed show. But some of those joyously executed death scenes. You can tell like the artists were all having a ball doing this. There's this celebration of human motion and power in it. But it was like, whew, mercy.
It's a little much.
A little much for me.
Gosh, I should have thought of that through my emphatic endorsements of that. Have you? How many episodes have you been able to make it through?
I think two.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, this is a lot.
Yep, it is a lot.
So I haven't tried My Hero Academia yet. So I will at least give it a shot, because who knows? It all also depends on context, right? So it might be the presentation of it, because One Punch Man has that kind of dour feeling of this guy who's utterly disinterested in his life going out and doing this magnificent action. So
that develops. It evolves.
Yeah.
Yep. I know. I want to find hooks that get you curious about One Punch Man, but it's not. It's One Punch Man, not One Note Man.
Right. Well, it's about him finding his groove again, right?
Sure. Yeah, I suppose. Yeah. He gets in a what I am so bad at sharing this kind of thing. It's such a funny premise to have for a podcast that I would help with, because I don't like spoilers. I don't like to cause spoilers, right? But and I just try to reevaluate, think what would be a bullet point on the box or in the paragraph summary kind of thing that provides the pitch. He goes from being an informal hero to a formal hero, right? And that they have a it's another, well, I guess it's a different take on the commonness of heroes. And in that world, it's dealt with in a like a big business context. And so there's it's part business, part society, infrastructure, government, agency type stuff. So there's an official career path kind of thing. And so that's a factor. But then the premise is One Punch Man is a bit bored with his capabilities. He still hopes for a difficult conflict to happen, but he solves it all with one punch and is disappointed.
And it's not just like, boop, he fell down. It's like
he doesn't reach out and go honk on their nose.
No, like 12 city blocks are knocked down when he punches the guy, right?
Yes.
Okay. Let's talk about a playing one real quick before we go to the second half of the show.
All right. Okay. So my list of playing is a little bit longer, I notice. So I will point out, I'm going to say in general, I think if there's games that you find are interesting comfort food to return to, it's nice to get set up to be able to revisit those from time to time. And I have a weird comfort food game. I don't know, maybe I think of it as weird because it's super violent and it has such a extreme 90s gritty grumble punch thing to it, right? It's it's Crackdown, and it's problematic in lots of ways where the sort of characterizations and the plot and stuff that does happen in little snippets where the premise is you're an agent which has superpowers, kind of a theme, I guess, right now. But they're nascent, and you develop those superpowers as you go about, taking out crime lords of let's see, was it like 1, 2, 3 different sort of boroughs that each has their own primary gang or faction running it, and you want to take out that faction. And the thing is, you have these different kinds of superpowers, which are funny if you think about it, because there's the basic ones where it's basically running and jumping. Then there's physical ability to punch and throw things, right? So you start out, you can pick up like a cinder block and whip it for a block, right? Cinder block, city block. But you can't pick up a car, right? You could make if you run up to a car and you kick or punch it, it goes, it gets bonked a little bit, right? And later on, you run up to that car, it goes tumble, or like when you punch it, and eventually you can pick it up and chuck
it's got like a Metroidvania kind of vibe where you like slowly power up through collecting different things in the game.
Exactly. And you use these skills and you get experience in these particular skills.
Gotcha.
That in some ways is funny because if you drive a lot, you get sort of driving power, right? And it makes no sense because as you drive a lot, your driving power transforms the vehicle into something more powerful, right? And that doesn't make sense, but it's fun.
Neither does Cyclops' eye beams in the X-Men, right? But like, we go along for the ride on that, right? So like, why not have a guy whose power can be extended to whatever objects?
I get in a car and it gets sweeter.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how, just a superpower. So it's and then there's like the explodey superpower. So if so there's a shooty superpower, then there's an explodey superpower. They're separate, whatever. So, but all in all, it's this progression of gaining a lot of strength for your character. So it's a fun, it's rewarding in that regard where you're making this character really powerful, and playing through it again, I'm doing the same thing that I played that was so compelling the first time, not just out of habit, but it's just the feedback loop is so strong. They have these orbs, these glowing orbs that are on the top of buildings, and like you can easily get to the top of small buildings at first, and you collect these orbs, and they actually help you get powerful a little faster for your running and jumping stuff. And then there's some that are higher and higher and higher, and they go all the way up to skyscrapers. And so you're kind of running around like you're in like you're in Super Mario 3D land or whatever, and just hopping across things, buildings, and you know, trying to figure out ways to get up high, right? And that's it's just a lot of fun. So it's a fun sandbox. The missions are definitely story-wise problematic or whatever, but not, I would characterize them not quite as bad as like a Grand Theft Auto. So yeah.
Well, you don't. I don't think you need to like couch that in anything, because I mean, as much as like I don't like to like watch gratuitous violence in my television, I do enjoy Resident Evil, right?
Oh wow. Okay.
There's something that's abstracted about the violence in that for me that I just feel like, okay, this is acceptable for some reason. I'm actually excited about the remake of Resident Evil 2.
Oh, cool.
So
Yeah. Like what gets you excited about that?
well, at least the gameplay, it was the fact that because it was static shots like that you move through, they did lots of really great tricks where they hid something around a corner and you don't find out what's there until you turn that corner. And then even then, like, so like you'll be going down a hallway and you'll hear a noise up in the upper right. And it's like, ooh, there's something right around that corner. And then you turn the corner and then the camera shot switches so that you're looking at yourself from the point of view of whatever's making that noise. So they do
good camera work. Yeah.
You've played the game, right?
I've played 2, but not. I don't believe I've completed Resident Evil 2. It had some iconic scenes in it, though, right? I mean, isn't that the one where there's an antagonist in a helicopter shooting out windows where you're like running, and to get past them, and that's a good, very iconic scene.
But see, this is all about context. Is that like what I find compelling about the game was like the puzzle solving and the searching and the uncovering of things, and the zombie shooting and stabbing was like an incidental part that raised the stakes. Right? It's like, ooh, this is scary. This is the part that makes me feel feel big feelings while I'm trying to solve this puzzle about this weird painting with a lighter under it. You know.
Sure, it adds a lot of tension. It's not. Mellow. Let's see, wine and cheese at the museum with the curious crowd.
Great. No, there's a guy who wants to eat your face.
Yep.
All right, you want to go to the second part of the show? Take a break?
Yeah, sounds good.
We're going to take a break and if you're watching live, if you want to put your recommendations, things you've been reading, watching, playing in the chat, we can read them in the second half of the show. But first, we got to take a break to thank some people who make this show possible. And those people happen to be the folks who support us on Patreon. Yes, patreon.com/leanintoart. Rob mentioned it at the top of the show. This is where you'll find the extra leans, the shows we record only for people who support us on Patreon. And what is it? It's a way for you to give us a monthly upvote. You to say, I believe in Rob and Jerzy. I believe in the stuff they make. So I'll chip in $1 a month or whatever you can afford. And 5 people have been doing exactly that thing are Chris Watkins. Thank you, Chris. And Jodels Pox, who you can find on Twitter at JBombArtist. Thank you, Jodels. And Spencer Hallam. Thank you for supporting us and believing in us and what we do. And Cameron Callahan, another cartoonist, comic book writer, you can find on Twitter at Cam Callahan. And finally, Dave Say. Dave Say, Rob, the creator of the Emergent Task Planner, something we talk about on this show all the time, the ETP. You can find David Say on Twitter at Dave Say. You can join them all at patreon.com/leanintoart, where you'll find all the shows we make, the extra leans. And the extra leans are me and Rob riffing, finding a topic, and then that post becomes an open mic post where you can follow up with whatever thoughts you want in a safe place where only fellow leaners hang out. And I want to thank everybody who has been supporting us at patreon.com/leanintoart. It means a lot to us.
It does. Thank you so much.
All right.
So fun. Yeah, speaking of like how we unbox things or what have you, Dave Say's blog, David, is it davidsay.com? Oh my gosh. If you want to see someone analytically exploring their creative process, how they manage their goals and things that like for self-education and exploration, all that, it's amazing. Like his blog is a great resource. I would say has a lot in common with how we tend to explore topics.
Agreed. Yes. And he's been on the show a couple times because, yes, we love talking with the man and loving to hear how he thinks about ideas. All right, let's hit the music for the second part of the show. Boom. And Rob looks thoughtful. That's from My Life as a Teenage Robot, which is one of my favorite, all-time favorite cartoons. Only went one season. Great cartoon. A teenage girl who's a robot. Trying to find her way in the world.
What year was that?
I want to say like 2004 or 5, somewhere in the neighborhood. It was a Nickelodeon show. Had a really cool Art Deco style to it. Anyway. So what do you want to do, Rob? Do you want to continue on with some of our reading, watching, playing items, or do you want to get into the angles on it?
I had one extra thought to add regarding Crackdown. If I may.
Okay.
So, little interesting tangent related to that. I was talking about how it's nice to have, if you happen to have the storage and this past investment in an old like game system, it's nice to be able to find a way to hook it up, right? And even if it was one that didn't, it's increasingly more and more likely that if you have a newer television from the recent few years, you might not have the ability to hook up old game systems, right? So this is something that I'm exploring a bit more. I've heard of a new option I want to try out that I don't remember the name, but what you seem to have do you have a thought on that?
Oh, no, I was just pointing right behind me right there.
Oh,
this is bad for podcasting, but good for video.
Yeah.
Right? Yes. That's why I keep this TV right there. As a younger person in my life recently said, one of those TVs with the roundy screen.
You got a roundy. Nice.
Which is the reason we keep it, is because that's for what Ann and I play our Atari on every New Year's Eve. So our Atari 2600. Anyway, sorry.
It has such a good look to it too. I know. I kind of wish I had a tube television, and because there's a few things that aren't solved, not easily. Like if you like classic, gun games, right? So things where the video signal was running through let's see, how did they do? I forget, but it's the vertical blanking layer. There's a white square somewhere in that's also being drawn on the TV. Your light gun looks for being aligned to that square. Well, the light gun plus the code running on the system, whatever.
So that's how games like Duck Hunt worked.
Yeah, exactly. Duck Hunt, and so, like an awesome PlayStation 1 era one was Point Blank, where it was like a bunch of fun puzzles to solve with a light gun, and like little reflex challenges. You might have to spell a word by shooting the right letters, and the one of them that stands out to me. I'd love this game. I wish I could play it right now so much. The level would start, and it's a tree with one leaf on it, and you can't shoot the leaf until it starts to fall, and you have one try. And the closer that leaf is to when it initially starts to fall, where it goes little creak, 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 and it breaks from that branch, that's where you get the good points. Gosh, I want to do that. Anyway, but those games are unplayable unless you have an older television and or one of a few other extreme things, because people have tried to create other workarounds since. Anyway, I was playing Crackdown on my Xbox 360, right? And as that generation of systems, happened to have, I was lucky. I think I only had one that had the red ring of death, where it becomes unplayable. I had my over the course of time, I lost my Crackdown save. I started playing again after having like really gone all the way through the whole thing, and I thought, I'm going to pick up Crackdown, I'm going to load my old save and just enjoy this sandbox of chaos with this character I had developed to as far as it could be developed. This was a fully, like, every power was maxed character gone, I discover. And I processed that and thought, well, What does this mean?
You came to terms with that.
I'm like, this is not what I wanted to find, but this is an opportunity. I'm good with starting again. And so I did, and I started, I was developing this new character. My Xbox red ringed, and dun, dun, dun. I was like, not again. What do I do? And, silly me, I probably should have started playing. I have an Xbox One as well. And over the course of that system's lifespan, it is, it has been for a long time able to play some games in an emulated mode that are older games, where it's like, hey, I have the disc. You put it in. It's like, okay, cool. I'm going to download the ability to play this game, and no problem. When I wasn't paying attention for a couple of years or whatever, that has become pretty robust. So Crackdown is on that list of games you can play. So, hey, I was able to put this in my Xbox One and start playing, no big deal. Except I once again lost my game save. Wasn't going to tolerate that. There's ways to get that game save off of the old system, right? So one way is you could sign up for Xbox Live from a working Xbox 360 that you moved the save, like, so the Xbox 360 had this, some models, we had this hard drive that can snap on and off the side. I happen to have two Xbox 360s. So I was able to snap off the drive, snap it on the working one, get past it, getting this file uploaded to the cloud, and then it was able to download it on my other machine. Other solutions, you can actually use just a USB stick or a memory card if you happen to have an Xbox memory card. Anyway, it's solvable to get that, old save off there. I chose to sign up at least for a year for Xbox Live again, because I want my Crackdown file to live in the cloud. I want it to live. Anyway, there you go. That's the rest of my Crackdown story.
No, I mean, similarly, I engage with Metroid in the exact same way, where it's this beloved game that, like, I just go back and just do from scratch on purpose, not because I lost my save file, but because I just want to experience it from ground zero all over again. I even will go all the way back to the very first Metroid, which is not that much fun to play from scratch. It's because I have it for the 3DS, and even for and I have a DS. Is that the one that opens like a laptop? Or is that okay?
Well, so yeah, the 3DS and the DS, where they're both the dual screen, right? And so
well, this one is not dual screen. This one is like, it opens like a laptop, but it's only one screen. What was that one called? Game Boy Advance.
Oh, it's
fudge.
Oh, it's just killing me. It's is it the white one? So it's like it's the Game Boy because it's not dual screen. Oh wait. Oh, you have the SP. SP. Yes.
SP. Thank you. Yeah. So like on Metroid Zero Mission, once you beat it, it lets you play, or maybe it lets you play it from the start. You can play the original Metroid on it. But so I've tried playing that from scratch, but that one's tougher.
It's a Game Boy Advance SP.
Thank you. Gosh, it took us a while to get there. Anyway, but yes, revisiting old games like Comfort Food, I think is, and I did actually not long ago revisit Metroid Samus Returns, the Metroid 2 remake that they've released for the 3DS. And while it's a gorgeous game, upon second play and third play all the way through from scratch, I'm a little bit bummed that it guides you so much through the game. And I know the original did too, but it makes me really hungry for a Metroid I can get lost in. And really lost. Like what do I do now? I don't know where to go. I want that feeling again. Maybe when the Metroid 4 is supposed to get announced and some gameplay is supposed to be shown pretty darn soon. So hopefully, fingers crossed. But then I will make time for gameplay again.
Ah, right.
And I will get a Switch. have to.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to know the one thing, like which ones are worth it, right? Because you don't want to make the investment if it's like if it's just not if it's not there. I had a game the DS early on, and it was one of those things where Nintendo actually overcharged, and they eventually sent coupons, and you get free you got free downloads for their app store because I mean it was kind of a mea culpa a little bit on their part for just having so few games, but yeah, obviously that turned out it's a great system. So how do you, all right, so you haven't, this is an interesting contrast as far as I've crafted some time to do a little bit of watching, do a little bit of reading and playing, right? And I think I don't know if it's, I don't know. I feel like part of why I've crafted time to play, it's both. I mean, you've got me thinking it's definitely having a thing I want to play, right? But then there's also like the time and the space too. Is that like which of those is sort of deprioritizing play video games in particular?
I think it would be partially not having something to play, not having something I'm very excited about, right? Not that I don't like games. It's just that there's nothing that's like, oh, I gotta get inside of that world, right? Like when Metroid Prime 1 came out, like I was like, well, I'm buying a GameCube. And I went out and bought a GameCube. And then it's like I just cleared my schedule for a month. I'm like, this is what I'm doing when I get home every night, like I'm immersing myself in this. That doesn't happen very often. Zelda Wind Waker was another one where it was like, oh my gosh, this is adorable. I'm making time for this. But again, we're talking like a long time ago too.
Oh yeah.
Like where the demands of my time were different. But when Metroid Return of Samus came out, the remake for 3DS, I made time. I scheduled, it's like I didn't schedule it, but it was more like I could take 15 minutes before bed to do this for a little bit, I could take a break, 10-minute break and do this for a little bit. So it's partially that, but it's also partially, yes, right now I'm in a place where even the audiobooks I'm consuming and the television shows I'm consuming are while I'm doing something else, like you described, right? So like I'm listening to audiobooks while I'm doing dishes or laundry or penciling and inking. And then I'm watching shows on the treadmill. That's the only time I really get to do that.
Oh, nice. I mean, I like, I don't know if I learned that from you sharing that or what, but that's a nice approach where just being on a piece of exercise equipment that makes that works and is safe to be able to watch something on.
Yeah,
that's
and
handy.
And I mean, I regret sometimes that I don't get. It's like I actually a couple weeks ago I watched one episode of Voltron on like a television instead of like on a phone mounted on my treadmill, and I was like, oh, I'm missing out. Like this sounds so good when it's coming over those like TV speakers and on that big screen, big relatively speaking. It's like this is a different experience than watching it on something that's like an iPhone size.
Interesting. Yeah, because I've seen a good portion of the My Hero Academia. I would say 80% or more on phone.
Something feels very utilitarian about that to me because that it's so small. Like you just don't get. It doesn't feel lavish like the way it does. Like when I watched, it's like you're watching something that's like expertly animated, right? You want to see it big, but I don't have any place to put that. There's no place like for me to give it my attention that I can give it at that time. Like I could play it in the background, but I'm just not going to engage with it in the same way.
Yeah, no, I mean that's given the trade-offs. I mean that's I don't know that I find that as like that was a hidden magical technology to be like just watch it on your phone. I saw because I think I mentioned this story a while back, but it was so a coworker during a lunch break unpaused one of the recent X-Men movies that they were watching as they were eating a sandwich next to me, and I'm like, hey, wait, what? it just was like a surprise to me where I knew that that functionally this exists, but as a habit, as a like, well, you eat a sandwich on your lunch break and you get through part of a movie. You don't have to watch the whole thing at once, and it's on your phone. I felt, I don't know. Yeah, it has its big trade-offs, right? But it's kind of awesome too. But that's
it is pretty cool, right? Like when you think about when we were kids. Oh my gosh, here comes like in my day moment. But like remember when like the Sony handheld Walkman television was like a thing?
Oh,
It had like
yeah.
a 2-inch screen, had that big antenna. You could just like watch like TV shows like over the airwaves, and like you used like a radio dial to tune the television. Now I didn't have one, but you know, you saw them, and there seemed like something about like I could have TV wherever I go. What? Like what kind of like, you know, futuristic Cybertron universe am I living in where we can have TV wherever I go? Right?
It did seem pretty fancy or whatever. There's an add-on for the TurboGrafx Express, little portable game system. That is a TV tuner. So like it's already sizable.
Wow.
You compare this thing, I'm trying to hold my hands, and it's I mean, it's on the shelf behind me or whatever, but gosh, it's like half a lunchbox you're holding in your hands. And then you clip on this little thing that's let's see, it's probably 1/16 of a lunchbox in lunchbox scale. That's the TV tuner. And I always thought, oh, that would be so cool. Even, you know,
so portable. I could take it anywhere.
Yeah.
It'd only take half my backpack up. I'd be like, watch this, guys. I'm watching all my children on the playground.
You hear that? It's a commercial. Yep. Okay. So portability helps us get through. Yeah. No matter what era, portability can help us make the time. That's interesting.
How are you squaring up the time?
I tend to it's not just portability of the physical device to consume it. I think I don't know, somewhere in the recent couple years, I accepted that I don't have to finish watching media. I mean, I do this for you. I mean, I imagine everyone does this for books all the time. You use a bookmark, you're done. You step away. Somehow, television, video-based media, movies, I never made that connection. And that's the big deal, because once I've made that connection, I can nibble at this stuff. I don't have to eat the whole thing at once. And which means I can actually take a break and be like, all right, I'm setting a goal to have a focused work session for 20 minutes, 45 minutes, hour and a half, whatever. And then I'm taking a blank break, whatever. That's nice. And also, like, the length of the shows don't always coincide with the length of a workout that I'll do, right? And so yeah, no big deal. Continue at another time. That's I know, pretty simple, no kidding, Captain Obvious stuff, but I feel that's pretty freeing.
Yeah. And it's funny that our time gets so segmented that a 21-minute investment feels like, well, I'm going to split that over 3 sessions.
Yeah. Funny. It says something about everyone's got the same time, everyone's busy in whatever way. But
yeah.
But just having that desire, like finding the space happens when you're like, gosh darn it, I really want to play that game. I really want to see that thing, and you can find the space. That's
I think, yes, that's a good reminder. Yes, is that it is possible to find the space through different kinds of trade-offs. And Troy, Shadow Inktronics, is in the chat again, reminding us that there's also tablets. Many of us have some kind of iPad that we can consume on, so it doesn't have to be like looking at it on a little tiny iPhone on my treadmill. Yes, I probably could rig up something to put a tablet on there and be a little bit better viewing experience than iPhone.
Yeah, and I suppose, I mean, it's visual, so honestly, bigger does make a difference. And there's probably a point of diminishing returns, right? A tablet, computer monitor, it's pretty nice. You can hold them close. It's good.
Yeah.
Yep.
Are we getting close to final thought?
I think so.
We got anything for final thought? Maybe.
I'll take a look at my notes.
Okay, you take a look at your notes. I will take another break for a couple minutes. Also, call out to the chat, people watching live, if you have any thoughts, questions, wonderings about how to organize time to make time for reading, watching, playing, or what are things you're reading, watching, and playing that you want to throw in the chat for us to react to them. Now's the time to do it. While I talk about some other people who make this show possible, and those people happen to be the folks who support us. Well, actually, no, it has to be us. It has to be me, you and me, Rob. We support ourselves.
We do support ourselves.
By making stuff.
Exactly.
And I introduced myself as a cartoonist and teaching artist, which is to say a person who makes graphic novels and then teaches people how to make graphic novels. And a graphic novel that I hope you will check out, it's in stores now, it's stores everywhere, is called Science Comics Rockets Defying Gravity. What is it? It is a comics documentary about the history and science of rockets as told by the animals who participated in rocket history. So true stories of animals and how they helped us understand flight better, rockets better. In many of the stories, in almost all the stories, the animals were unharmed. We took care to find those stories too. Although, you know, in the case of like bears who were using ejector seat technology, they ejected out of a plane. They were lightly injured in the ejecting out of the plane. And then the way that the doctors found out that they were lightly injured is that the bears were euthanized and dissected. But if that makes you uncomfortable, that's part of the idea of the story, because that's the journey we go on through this thing. Is that like part of it's like, whoa, bears and ejector seats, that's amazing. Well, wait a second, should we be doing that? And then the last chapter of the book explores how we're not doing that anymore. Now we're sending robots up to do all this dangerous stuff. So it's for kids, but also I would say that it's a funny book. And I think it is appealing to adults as well. And I think a lot of us haven't thought about Newton's laws of motion in a long time unless we are a physicist or a rocket scientist. So if you are not those things, you're probably going to learn something about this. And you're also going to learn about like unknown stories of animals in rocket history. You can find out more about it at sciencecomicsrockets.com. That's where you'll be able to read a preview of the book and then also find it in a store near you. Hey, Rob.
Hey, Jerzy, quick thought. That book is awesome. I think everyone listening should get a copy for themselves. And anyone who's an enthusiast in rockets, especially it relates to, you know, our space exploration and all that. And there's this combination of it is a really fun book, tons of fun jokes that I think I laughed and I learned a lot. The kinds of facts, I mean, both history and like science, reminders of science and things that maybe even you hadn't studied yet. It's like super approachable, and you get to sound like, you know, share some fun things. It's like you ever like to be the person who's like, hey, did you know? And there's a lot of good stuff in this book for that.
Yes, it'll definitely give you a few talking points at parties. But let's talk about, we've been talking about playing games a lot. And Rob, you make a game.
I do. It's called This Panda Needs You. Actually, co-designed with my wife, Kate Shields Stenzinger. And it started out, it was all about like, how do we make like a fun, approachable game that has some learning aspects to it for a young audience. And it's like pattern matching and memorization and some interaction with you know, simple interaction where you're sort of dragging shapes around, stacking them. There's physics. That's neat. And it is a really mellow, approachable game. But it turns out, I mean, I've tabled and I see people of all ages and interest play this, and because it's also mellow. It's pleasant to be solving some puzzles for this little panda who's dancing and super happy that you're solving puzzles, helping this panda out. So the whole premise is you've got pattern stacks of blocks. They get they're fine. And then they get knocked down, and then you're here to help the Panda put things back to the way they were. Starts out super easy, gets a little more challenging over time as there's more blocks, more complex patterns, and there's like over 50 levels. It's available for tons of platforms: iPhone, iPad, Android phones, and tablets. It's on Windows desktops, works great on like a Windows tablet, and then also Mac desktops. So all these links to the different stores and stuff are available at this-panda.com.
And if you have purchased the game and you haven't done this yet, giving it a review helps more people find it. So wherever you purchased it, give it a review. If you have the time, write a few words about what you liked about it, and that'll help more people discover it. And we appreciate everybody who has been doing exactly that. If you are here because you like the way we think about stuff more than the stuff we make, that's fine. That's fair, because this is a product that we make, this show. And there's more things like it at leanintoart.com/workshops, where you can download videos at a price of your choosing, even free, self-contained workshop videos based on the stuff we talk about in the show. If you're watching the video on YouTube, giving it a thumbs up right now helps more people find the show. If you're listening to it in a podcatcher like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, giving it a 5-star review wherever you listen to it helps more people find the show as well. We thank everybody who has been doing those things. It means a lot to us.
It does. Thank you. Well, final thought, perhaps.
Okay.
And I say perhaps because I'm curious about your reaction to this. There's something that came up earlier is the idea of aligning schedules for this kind of thing. And I think aligning schedules can take a lot of forms, right? It's going to affect in a variety of ways. It's like, oh, hey, we have a group of friends that gets together and watches this show that is coming out weekly, or was coming out weekly, and we're getting through it, one episode at a time or whatever. Do you have what kind of reading, watching, playing things do you do that are sort of scheduled with other people?
Oh.
And like, how do you do that?
Oh, I do have one. I forgot about this. Thank you. So every Saturday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on a cable channel called MeTV, a show called Svengoolie airs. And what Svengoolie is it's a scary movie of the week, monster movie of the week show with a spooky host, like Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, that kind of thing. And Svengoolie's this guy that wears like a fright wig and a top hat, and he like comes out of a casket at the beginning of the show. He makes all sorts of bad pun jokes about the movie, but he also does like a little bit of a TCM Robert Osborne kind of thing, where he also, in the little commercial break segments, tells you information about how this movie was made, if there's any special facts about the different people who wrote it or directed it or acted in it. He'll give you that information as well. So you're not only watching a Godzilla movie, you're learning more about Godzilla, because there's this, and meanwhile, he's got all these puppets and, other characters who show up on the show and antagonize him. There's this whole business of people throwing chickens at him. Anyway, yeah. That there's like I still don't know. I've only been watching it for a few years, but like there's this bit where like in the beginning and end of the show, people just start throwing chickens at him, for like rubber chickens, and like he has to like hide in his casket at the end, like to get away from the chickens being thrown at him. I don't know the full story behind it. Eventually I will. But like that's like mine and Anne's Saturday night thing, and like it's a big ask to get us away from the house at that time. Like 8 to 10 p.m. Saturday night is mine and Anne's time to watch Svengoolie together. So that's a scheduled thing. It's a date night kind of thing. And usually we'll do other things while it's playing. Like I'll be drawing while it's playing, and Anne might be doing some email work or some knitting or whatever she feels like doing at that time. So it's multitask, but it's a block of time that we make into an experience.
Well, this is an ongoing thing. I have, let's see, sometimes typically it's my wife and I, and also like as a family, like we will have a thing where we're chipping away at, but it's kind of an event of like, for this couple of months, we're slowly getting through like the, like Avatar, The Last Airbender as a family. Right. And, it's kind of funny how trying to do that as a group creates a little bit of a tension where it's like, well, a few of us are together, we could do that thing. But then part of the commitment is to say, no, we're not all here, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
A little bit of tension there. And it's especially if it's not this, that like a scheduled thing. We've been able to do like a family movie night sometimes consistently. It's like, oh, every Friday. Or it's like, well, all of a sudden Fridays aren't working. Well, let's do Saturday. And then Saturdays won't. It's just, but so it's something that we're often trying, but it's not like a totally solid, predictable schedule.
Yeah, it's like doing this show because we have a specific day and time that we do it every week. And that's like, we've made that like kind of a non-negotiable thing. It's easier for us to show up to it whether we feel up to it or not, right? Whereas when you introduce any kind of flexibility, like any other podcast I do is not on that kind of schedule, and so they don't get updated as much because it becomes difficult to wrangle more than a couple people together. I also noticed that I'm also watching a show called Legends of Tomorrow, which is a CW superhero show about time travel. And one of the reasons I'm watching it is because I have this weekly phone call with a buddy. It's at a very specific day and time. It's this day of the week at this time of the week. And we just use that as like a thing to have like, we're going to talk about one show a week. Just the two of us have a private conversation, like picking apart this show. And because there's the scheduled call, there are weeks where it's like, oh crap, I haven't watched Legends yet. And then I've got to hurry up and watch it before the call. And then it becomes like work. So it changes the complexion of the experience, right? I got to do my homework. And then there's weeks where it's like, I didn't fit it in. I show up, I'm like, I'm sorry, I didn't do my homework. It's like, okay, we'll talk about it next week. So those tensions can also like kind of rob the joy out of it sometimes. Oh, burgle the joy. I shouldn't say rob the joy. Anyway.
My name is a verb. My nickname. There isn't a Robert the Joy. Robert the Joy. Hello, I'm Robert the Joy.
That's your wrestling name.
Yeah.
What? Robert the Joy Stenzinger.
With the affectation of what? Tambourines? I don't know. Something. Yeah. Something jangly. Anyway. Tambourine, but as like a primitive vehicle as well. So could chuck a tambourine, right? That's a thing. But then to come down the plank, the ramp on like a tambourine trike. Interesting.
He's here. The joy is here. But yeah. So like it becomes challenging when you introduce more than a couple people into it, right? And like you can't move on without the group.
Yeah, but at the same, so it's, so it can be a premise, but not necessarily a severe constraint, right? So the whole point is to getting together, socializing, connecting and all that, and then sharing a common interest. That's that's a fun idea, doing the whole that's kind of a book clubbish way to do stuff where it's like, oh yeah, we're navigating a thing, and then we share but talking about it is so it's, oh gosh, it's like the what do they call that, the where Khan Academy and similar things, when you actually watch the video in your own time, but then your time together is like more hands-on, and you're doing the homework or whatever, the real analysis and conversation as a group.
Yeah.
That's fun. It's a fun idea. Honestly, it's a great premise for a show. But
oh yeah, well, and that's like a thing that's like in podcasting is kind of, I've noticed, I'm hearing more and more about podcasts where somebody does an episode by episode breakdown of a series, right? Like, so at the Ann Arbor District Library, there's a guy who's doing a podcast. I think he's doing episode by episode of Alfred Hitchcock Presents. Watches an episode, then talks about it, right? Analyzes it. And there's like a bunch of 80s cartoons ones where like a group of friends will do a synopsis breakdown in order, going through an entire series, as people do it with comic book series. Yeah, I'm just doing this just for fun with a friend, and like not it's just between us, it's just our experience. But yeah, I could totally see doing a podcast series on a variety of topics that way, right?
Well, and okay, so other things have that sort of that recurring coordination. That's sort of a hobby. I mean, you can have themed clubs. I think our art challenges are kind of like that. They're not about necessarily consuming some kind of media. It's about making stuff, but it's pretty similar. You're aligning on some recurring thing, and that just aligning of schedules for me somehow in chewing on it, I'm like, gosh, that's the toughie. It's always,
and if it's more than 3 people, it's darn near impossible.
Exactly. I mean, that's when you're creating a whole league or a sport at that point.
Yeah. So
well, I mean, what do you think, Jerzy? Did we
I think we did
make a podcast?
We did. We made a podcast.
Okay.
All right. So thank you all for downloading, watching, and listening. This has been Lean Into Art Cast, with the show that we record every Thursday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. Almost every Thursday. Sometimes we rebroadcast because it's that time of year. But we got good stuff in the archives. Whenever we rebroadcast, we pull up something that is worth listening to. We don't just grab any old episode. Although I would argue most of them, if not all of them, are pretty darn good, right?
Oh yeah. That's what we bring. We deliver the quality every time, on time, with that being relative.
I love the shifty high thing that you did. But yes, we stream it live on YouTube when we do the new episodes, and then we collect them later as a podcast at patreon.com/leanintoart and leanintoart.com. Yeah. So we'll be back with another episode soon. And until then, I have been Jerzy Drozd of leanintoart.com and Jerzy Drozd on Instagram.
And it turns out I'm also of leanintoart.com, except I'm Rob Stenzinger, also known as Rob DeJoy. So that means I'm wrestling to take the joy away from the opponent. I don't think so. No, I take the joy from the opponent and give it to the audience. I give it to my friends. All right. And I'm on the social networks as Rob Stenzinger. See you there.
Okay, bye.
Show notes for this episode can be found at leanintoart.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at the user leanintoart, and you can reach us via email at leanintoart@gmail.com. And remember, leaners aren't wieners. Thanks for listening.
Okay, I'm going to shut off the stream. Thanks, everybody. See you guys later.
See ya.